Hello, I'm Andrea Klim, and you're watching Turn to the Stars. And this week, I'm going to be talking about the 4 blood moons, meaning the 4 total lunar eclipses that are going to be occurring in 2014 and 2015. And actually, today being April 15th, we had the first of this series of 4 occur last night through the night. Really couldn't see it too much here in New Hampshire because there was cloud cover. However, it is the first of 4 that we'll be experiencing here. Very rare. The total eclipses, they are a rare occurrence. But before we begin the show, I do want to take a moment. Today is April 15th, 2014, and a year ago today was the bombing of the Boston Marathon, and I just wanted to take a moment to honor the victims and to remember them because it is certainly something that encouraged people to pull together and form the Boston Strong community. So very important to remember these dates. So I wanted to do that at the beginning of the show, but I also want to move on to talk about these 4 blood moons, total lunar eclipses, because last night, as I said before, through the night we did experience a total lunar eclipse, also being called a blood moon. And the reason for that is the appearance of a very coppery red color of the moon during the total lunar eclipse. That is actually because the dispersed light of all the Earth's sunrises and sunsets falls on the face of the moon at mid-eclipse, and it appears that coppery red color. So it's really interesting phenomena. The term, though, blood moon, can be used because it describes all of the total lunar eclipses. They all appear to be this color when it's total. And the only time that we do not see it, that red, coppery red color, is when there's a lot of volcanic activity on Earth. So during those times, it could appear like a brown or grayish color. And I did quite a bit of research because you've heard me on past shows at Turn to the Stars talking about the eclipses of April of 2014, and also about the grand cardinal cross that's squared off, and also about the 5th occurrence of the 2 power planets, Uranus in the constellation of Aries and Pluto in the constellation of Capricorn, forming its 5th square. Very, very powerful, energetic month, April of 2014. And historically, we have only seen these blood moons or total lunar eclipse 8 times in the last 2,000 years. And each time they have been a symbol that something is about to change and history is about to be created. And I have actually a diagram like I'd like to put on the screen, and that right there is a diagram which gives the dates of the 4 total lunar eclipses, which in astrology and astronomy we are calling them a tetrad. Tetrad means 4, and you could see the actual diagram or the figure that's on the bottom of the screen. That is actually a tetrahedron, and it has 4 sides to it. Now, these total lunar eclipses, there are going to be 4 of them, and the first one was last night, and it was exactly at 25 degrees and 17 minutes in the constellation of Libra. And this lunar eclipse, full moon in Libra, brings a focus to our relationships and the dynamics in our relationships, because relationships are the looking glass through which we can see ourselves. And so over the course of the next 6 months, the energy that manifests from this total lunar eclipse will show you where balance needs to be restored in your relationships. And so that is a very brief overview of what this energy influence is going to deliver. And we are on the light side of this eclipse now. So I want to talk about the next of the four, the second, which is actually this diagram right here is October 8th, 2014 is going to be the second total lunar eclipse, and that is at 15 degrees and 9 minutes in the constellation of Aries. And the third occurrence of this total lunar eclipse, and we're also calling them the blood moons, is going to be on April 4th of next year, 2015, and that is going to be exactly at 14 degrees and 26 minutes in the constellation of Libra. And the fourth one is going to be September 27th of 2015 at 4 degrees and 40 minutes in the constellation of Aries. So these are the four dates that we're looking at for the four total lunar eclipses and blood moons. And the next figure I have is actually of the April 15th, 2014 total lunar eclipse. And I do have a diagram of that. That is actually the chart of the what the solar system and where the planets were exactly at the peak of the total, as the total lunar eclipse was complete, which was at 4:11 a.m. this morning. And you can see where the red arrow is pointing down, and that red arrow is showing us the full moon, eclipsed full moon, and right beside it is the symbol for the north node, which is showing us the direction that this energy is influencing us to go in, which will provide many benefits. And also you can see that this lunar eclipse is occurring on the axis of Libra and Aries. The sun is at 25 degrees Aries, and the moon is at 25 degrees Libra. And I want to just show you each one of these eclipses. The next one that is occurring in October, there we see it where the red arrow is on the right side of the screen. There's the total lunar eclipse that is occurring on October 8th, 2014, and I believe they call that the Hunter's Moon. And again, you see the red lines in the middle are showing us the axis of Libra and Aries once again. But there is going to be a difference. I'm going to talk about this eclipse in another show. Really want to focus on the eclipse, the energy that's manifesting for us right now. But here's the next chart. This is the third total lunar eclipse, and this one is occurring April 4th, as you heard me talk about before. And we can see on the bottom of the screen where the green arrow is. It's pointing right to that full moon eclipsed. And one thing you can note is that as I noted on the first chart, is that the north node, which is a point, it's not actually a physical body, but it's a point, is right beside the full moon. So that's what tells us that this is a total eclipse, total lunar eclipse. Again, on the axis of Aries, the sun being in Aries and the moon being in Libra. I'm going to talk more about what that means coming up. And the fourth chart I have is actually this is the fourth, but I made a mistake. It looks like I should have called it the fourth, but this is September 27th of 2015. And this is the total lunar eclipse that is occurring then. You can see the red arrow at the very top of the screen pointing to the crescent moon at 4 degrees of Aries. And it is with the south node of the moon. Again, the axis, you can see the opposing force between the sun and the moon. And we are on the axis again of Aries, and Libra. All four of these eclipses are on that cardinal axis. So let's talk about what that means in astrology, because certainly our sense of self-identity with the sun in Aries can only be fully known when we relate to someone else, which is the eclipsed moon in Libra. So with the full moon, total lunar eclipse in Libra, we need to remember to have our own point of view. Very important for us to know what our point of view is when we relate to others. Our true sense of balance comes when we each stand on our own side of the scale. Relationships are made up of two. And everyone has a Libra sensibility within them, or sensitivity, and this is how we create good relationships. But both people need in a relationship for their needs to be met. Compromise is involved. And this full moon lunar eclipse is certainly bringing this to light over the course of the next 6 months. Every single full moon is going to carry a flavor of this Libran type energy. So compromise, what does it mean? It means that you know where you stand. If you know where you stand and someone else makes it known where they stand, then it makes it, compromise is I give, you give. And so that's the awareness we can get from this eclipsed full moon. Our awareness is growing through the influence of this lunar eclipse. It gives us the awareness to bring a situation to an end. As you heard me say before, that we are on the light side of the lunar eclipse, meaning we're not in the dark anymore. Now the light is very evident. Our awareness is here. So while the sun's light is blocked by the earth's shadow during the eclipse, our unconscious motivations and desires are more easily felt. So the light side of the eclipse, that is what I was talking about before, is where we are, offers us the potential to find clarity and healing of the relationships that are around us. So this total lunar eclipse occurs within, as you saw on that first chart of April 15th, 2014, right through the middle of it, it looked like there was a cross. And that's what we call, and it has squares all the way around it. That's what we call a cardinal grand cross. And you've heard me talk about this on other shows. But what is happening is that cardinal grand cross is perfecting this week. The week of April 15th. This means there'll be new ideas and realizations that will be available for us to use in our lives. So we should pay close attention to the things that are showing up in our lives. So this month, stay aware, keep the faith, and be brave, and realize that this is a time for change to occur. Understanding is what astrology brings to us. And when we look at how the planets are out in the universe, it certainly is, it looks very chaotic. It looks like there's a lot of pressure. So, it's a really important time to just sort of step back and watch and listen and pay attention and be aware. Because things are changing quite drastically right now. And I did some history, some research into the blood moons, and it appears that, and there's actually a pastor that has a book out that he just published about this. In the religious Jewish communities, there's been noted a correlation between the blood moons when their pattern begins on a Jewish holy day. And in the last 500 years, it's been noted that a tetrad of lunar eclipses or blood moons was a marker of major historical events to come, like the Six-Day War in 1967. So I actually mapped out the we're in the fourth occurrence of a set of 4 blood moons, and so I mapped out some dates on these just to give you some history. In 1493 and 1494, there was an occurrence of 4 blood moons, and which was the Spanish Spanish Inquisition occurred during this time, the fall of Spain, when the Jewish people were kicked out of Spain and they were heavily prosecuted. That was the first occurrence. 4 blood moons occurred in 1949 to 1950, and during this time the Jewish people came back to their land, and Israel declared its independence. Their government is reestablished, and it is the first time in 2,000 years that Israel is a sovereign nation. They defend themselves with success against the attacks of 7 Arab nations. So this was the second occurrence of a 2-year period of 4 blood moons, 4 total lunar eclipses that actually fell at the beginning of a Jewish holy day. Then we have a period of 19 years pass, which is actually every 19 years is a cycle of eclipses that begins the same in the same sign again. But 19 years later, we have 4 blood moons occur again, starting in 1967 and finishing up in 1968. And during this time, Jerusalem is recaptured and Jewish people get Israel back in just 6 days. And now, once again, having 4 blood moons, which began last night on the eve of Passover, which was April 15th, 14th into the 15th of 2014, we had the first blood moon of 4 occurring. And we're back to back. Whenever you see these total lunar eclipses, blood moons occur within a 2-year period, it certainly has to be considered that this is a sign from the heavens. So we know the influence of the energy of the full moons is noted for delivering in our lives over the top heightened influences to us on a psychological level. We all know that emotionally we're more apt to respond out of emotion during a full moon because there's this pull, and we know that. So as I mentioned earlier, historically we find that the eclipses are noted for being markers for changes on a grand scale. So as you heard me mention, I know you've watched past shows, April's celestial events, the eclipses, the cardinal cross, and the 5th square between Uranus and Pluto does promise that April of 2014 is going to be a crazy month. And it hasn't, it hasn't been celestial such activity with the planets as we're seeing right now since the times of the American Revolution, which was 1775 to 1783. You know that the United States was born in 1776. But we have not seen this type of activity with the planets since that time, and that was a revolution. So we're really watching closely and keeping our eyes wide open because pressures are certainly heightened at this time. Just yesterday we had an experience where a American Navy ship had a 90-minute observation by a Russian fighter plane, and so you can certainly feel the tensions. And with cardinal cross showing up in our solar system, it's very important that we be very careful with our actions, very, very careful on how we react to adverse experiences. Very, very important, because this grand cardinal cross we see right now in our solar system formed by the planets has been named what we call a quantum gateway toward an incredible world change occurring on all levels. And I actually, if you could put chart B back on the screen, which shows us the April 15th one, chart, astrology chart. Yep, that's it right there. I want to talk about this chart for a little while because the Grand Cardinal Cross that I've been talking about is what you're seeing right in front of you. It looks like a cross with squares connecting it on all sides. And this is what we call a Grand Cardinal Cross. And we see the planets Pluto involved in this. Pluto is on the top left side, probably right about 11 o'clock. And what Pluto in the constellation of Capricorn is telling us, and this is a power planet, is that major transformations are in the midst. All systems, the politics, the government, corporations, leaders, lifestyle, the very structures of these areas are transforming. And what you're looking at, though, this Grand Cardinal Cross is pressure packed. And if you take your hand and you move it to the right over to where the lunar eclipse is, and we see right next to the total lunar eclipse, we see the planet Mars in Libra, which is part of this Grand Cardinal Cross, and that tells us Mars is the planet of action, anger, activity. It's the muscle, and that planet is in the constellation of Libra, and what it's telling us is that there's major changes, and that there's volatility, that justice, truth, transparency, relationships, marriage, that there's lots of fight for a cause, and that there could be explosions if people are acting out of anger. And if you take your hand and you move it down the right side of the screen on that connecting line down to the planet Jupiter, which is probably right at about I'd say 4 o'clock if you had a clock up on the screen, you see the symbol for the planet Jupiter. And Jupiter is in the constellation of Cancer. And what that is telling us is that there's major expansion, and that we need to get out of our heads and into our hearts. Service and humanitarian, emotional, intelligence. Heart is where the home is. And home is where the heart is. And so we are expanding. Jupiter wants us to expand in our sensitivities, to care for and to nurture each other rather than respond negatively and, retreat and hide in our shells. And it's not an easy thing. So the fourth, on that chart, if I could put that chart up one more time, there it is. If you take your finger from Jupiter over on the right side and you see the red line that goes in the middle all the way to the left, and we see that the fourth side of this cross, Grand Cardinal Cross squared off, is to Uranus and Mercury in the constellation of Aries. And Uranus is a very unstable energy. Actually, in one of my astrology classes, we've dimed it as being, we call it crazy pants, because its energy is very erratic and crazy, and that energy is right next to the planet Mercury, which rules our thoughts, our ideas, our mental capacities. And so this is where the major quantum shifts are occurring in our minds, in our heads, and that people are looking to free themselves from these, and there's lots of rebellion. We're seeing rebellion, we're seeing revolutions. We're seeing people wake up to be aware of their intuition and the guidance of their intuition, that there's conscious desires, that there's unity in our I am diversity. So we have 4 cardinal signs here, 4 planets, very, very powerful planets in cardinal signs that really are not finding it easy to work together. So if we are surrounded by stress, we are going to obviously, quite naturally, react to what's around us. And so what we're seeing here does not make it easy for us to respond in positive ways because there's so much pressure. And the potential that this chart holds is to be filled with tension and pressure. And historically, so these 4 blood moons, that is, we can also call them the revelation of the 4 stations of the earth, has been noted as a gateway for war and chaos. It can be this. There is a potential for that because of the pressure and the tension that's in this chart. So based on history, they do have this correlation to the Jewish people as the tetrad began. The tetrad, or the 4, the first of the 4, began last night. So it's interesting that this chart, the cardinal energy actually means, cardinal itself, the word means hinge or a turning point. The Grand Cardinal Cross formation signifies that we are at a turning point in our cosmic history. And the exact cardinal Grand Cross hits maximum effect on April 22nd when Mars in Libra opposes Uranus in Aries exactly and squares Jupiter in Cancer and Pluto in Capricorn. And that's what you were saying. And it's interesting that NASA says getting 4 umbral total lunar eclipses in a row is like drawing a rare lunar poker hand of 4 of a kind. Just like the poker players, astronomers have a name for that lucky draw, and they call it a tetrad. So the astronomers, NASA, calls it a tetrad as well. And the most unique thing about the 2014-2015 tetrad is that all of them are visible for all of us here in the United States. And the NASA eclipse expert Fred Espenak said in a statement, in the 21st century there will be many tetrads, but look back a few centuries and you'll find the opposite phenomena. Before the dawn of the 20th century, he said there was a 300-year period where there was actually no total lunar eclipses. So as a result of last night's blood moon, total lunar eclipse, issues of identity and partnership, which is the Aries axis, the Aries Libra axis, is going to be front and center. And I know that we're reaching around the, very close to the end of the show. So real quick, I'm going to just give you a couple questions that may come up for you, such as, who am I? What is my projected image? Who do I partner with? How do I cooperate and form relationships with others? These are really important questions that you might want to write down and focus on over the course of the next 6 months, especially around the times of the full moon, because every single month, based upon the theme that this picture is painting for you in your life, you are going to have experience. So you'll be growing and learning. So I want to say thank you for watching Turn to the Stars this week, and turn to the stars and you'll find your answers there. Take good care, and I'll see you next week.